Hello, everybody. So this is the most high-tech presentation I've ever been involved in. So this is kind of exciting here for me. They asked me to talk about training, education, and certification, which is clearly my passion, among many other things. So I'm here to talk, or I'm going to be talking about what are the benefits of that. So NAWT used to stand for the National Association of Wastewater Transporters, but they transitioned to technicians back in the 2000s because we found that we were really providing a voice for all practitioners, the boots on the ground people, individuals within the industry. NAWT began in 1985 to provide that voice to the industry and help with national regulations regarding land application. Our big focus these days is training, education, and certification for those practitioners that are getting their hands dirty and not necessarily sitting behind a desk doing the job. In 1990s, we offered our first NAWT inspector training course, which was developed because of national concerns over septic inspections at the time of property transfers. But we have grown and we've added courses that cover all sectors within the industry. We have courses and workshops for inspectors, installers, operations and maintenance, design, vac truck training, for those in the industry that actually operate a vac truck. We'll talk more about those in a little bit. I, again, have a passion for training and education. I've been training and educating for what seems like forever. I used to train dogs, I train horses, but I will tell you, people are the toughest to train so far. I began with NAWT back in 2008, and the reason I got involved in the state association was simply because I was looking for information, some kind of a pamphlet, something that I could hand to the homeowner that said that what my husband and I were talking about and telling them was true, just basically trying to validate what we were telling people about their systems. I got in, and that was, again, it was in an effort to train and educate them to help them understand what's going on with their system. This led me to utilize my degree in business, finance, and accounting, and develop a budget and a plan to show Seipp how they could put together a training program using the NAWT courses and make it affordable to practitioners, and where the cost to Seipp could be minimal, and they could actually make money with these things. When I started this project, Seipp had about $12,000 in their checking account. As of right now, they've got over $300,000 in their checking account, and it is due directly to providing training, education, and certification in the state of Colorado. The other thing, the other benefit of that was that they started out, they had one county that required training. There's now 23 counties out of the 63 counties in Colorado that require some kind of training, education, and certification. What it's done is it's allowed them to bring training and make it affordable to practitioners in our area. Okay, so basically these are the things I'm going to highlight. Oops, sorry, catch up. These are the topics that I'm going to be touching on today. Going to be talking about the on-site industry, a little bit of history about it, the importance of education, types of education and training, and a little bit about what's right for you. Oops, keep up with it. As with most things, we don't know what we don't know until we know it, right? There are things that happen that get us to ask why, what is going on, and how do I fix this, or how do we make it better? This is the first stage of learning and the learning process, and this develops into education. The on-site industry is no different, right? And like all things, ignorance is not bliss. We've come a long way from just thinking that we needed to dispose of the wastewater and to understand the water, that water, even wastewater, is a valuable resource. It's a limited resource, and we must treat it before we release it back into the wild. But when you're thinking you're just getting rid of it, there isn't much need for education at that point, right? When you're thinking you're just disposing of it. you're not thinking about education. There's nothing to know about that, right? It just has to go away, and we have used what we need, and we've used it how we want to do it, and any residual can just go away. Back in the day, we didn't understand the soil component of systems, and that really drives much of what needs to happen to the wastewater before we return it to the water cycle. The ideas of advanced treatment, aerobic treatment, filtration systems, recirculating filters, those were foreign ideas as sending the man to the moon. But as time has gone on, communities have become more dense. We now understand the water cycle much better, and we now know there is a need to understand and be educated on how these systems work. Even the most basic system, even the most simplistic gravity-fed system needs to be looked at, needs to have it periodically reviewed to ensure that it's not causing any kind of environmental or public health concern. We can no longer just keep doing the same thing because that's the way we've done it. A little bit about history. It was because someone put two and two together, we figured out that there was a connection between cholera and contaminated wells and cesspools. Dr. John Snow, who's an anesthesiologist for Queen Victoria, was the first to describe that relationship between cholera and contaminated wells from the cesspools, and that was between 1831 and 1854. Tens of thousands of people in England were sick due to cholera. Dr. Snow believed and showed that it was the sewage being dumped into the rivers and the cesspools near the towns that was contaminating the water supply, leading to that rapid spread of the disease. When you look at where we started as a nomadic people and where we are today with our dense communities, you can see where experience and education has changed the way we think about many things, including the way we think about wastewater. We have gone from pooping out into the wilderness to having a cesspool to having a seepage pit to now we have a system that has a drain field, now called soil treatment areas, and now we're doing even more advanced treatment on the wastewater before we're returning it to the water cycle. We have a better understanding of what the soil is actually doing in our systems and the benefit of aerobic treatment over anaerobic treatment. We understand the need for watertight tanks and the importance of management. Education and research have created changes in pipe types, materials, and the equipment and the types of products out there continues to evolve. We continue to develop secondary treatment for our on-site systems, similar to centralized wastewater treatment plants, but we still have a long way to go. How can and will the on-site industry change in the future? Consider where we are from where we have come and what a short period of time it is. My grandparents remember not having indoor plumbing or septic systems out on the farm. And that was early 1900s, right? Septic tanks became a fashion in the 1940s. Okay. Through science, education, and study, we have ways of creating higher level of treatment. They can treat the water to where you can actually drink it immediately. Not that anybody gets excited about that, but they can do it. That technology is there. We understand that the systems, all systems, again, from the most simplistic to the most advanced, need to have better management. We also know that this understanding of the systems, what they are, how they work, how to regulate, design, install, service, and maintain, and inspect all requires some sort of training and education. There is more to know that we can no longer rely on the job training for our systems. Everything and everybody has experienced on-the-job training at some point in their career. In the on-site industry, because it's such a small industry, this is the first type of training that occurs, typically and historically. There are sectors in the industry where on-the-job training isn't really a choice, right? It's not going to happen there. Regulators and engineers, to do those jobs, they're looking for some kind of college education. But there's others in our industry, the pumpers, the installers, operation and maintenance. These are usually small family-owned operations. And if you're not part of the family, then you typically start with some sort of a labor-intensive parts of the job, hauling the hoses, digging the dirt, running the tools. Even if you are part of the family, there's a good chance that you started at the bottom. My husband, I didn't mention that earlier, my husband, we got involved in this industry My husband's father started a septic tank pumping business in 1959, and my husband has been doing this his whole life. He's now 71. I think it's time for him to retire. But again, everything that he learned was what his dad told him. It was all on the job training. My father-in-law used to tie a rope around my husband's waist and then to the hose and let him climb up the side of the mountain instead of having him instead of my father-in-law dragging the hose up. That's, using what you got, using the tools that you have. On the job training is not necessarily bad. However, if your predecessor has never taken education seriously or bothered to learn about the industry and what makes it tick, chances are that you're getting a less than stellar information. On-the-job training gives rise to some of the old wives' tales we've heard about. Many are without basis and certainly without any research, study, or real understanding of what is actually happening. Many have worked, but not for the reasons that the tale teller thinks, but for some other outside factor or just pure luck. And with what we know now, are those systems, is that wives' tale really working? Is the wastewater actually being treated, or is there something else going on? When I do the NAWT courses, we cover the topic of additives. This is where we get a lot of discussion on some of the things that you've seen out there, right? Yeast, manure, dead cat. Somebody always has something new and exciting to talk about. Well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said that, of what pumpers have seen in the field over the years. And some of them can be quite amazing. We had a colleague that worked in our area, and every time he pumped the septic tank, he'd say, okay, you got to put 5 pounds of yeast and 5 pounds of baking soda in there. And that will help your system until the next time you pump it, which may be 5 or 10 years later. It's like, no, it's not. Dilution is going to take care of that. And I always was wondering if he was trying to bake a cake or something. Anyway, clearly, things have changed since the first cesspool is installed. We now understand usage. The things that are going down into the sewer system are way different than what grandma and grandpa put down their systems, okay? We have changed from disposal, getting rid of it, to a treatment mentality. Usage. Back in the day when grandma and grandpa had a septic system, the only thing that went into the septic system was the bathroom. You had the septic tank that would take the shower and the toilet, and that was it. And then you had out the kitchen, you had a grease trap with it, generally its own leach line or its own seepage pit. The septic tank never had to be pumped, and the grease trap only had to be cleared out periodically. Nowadays, everything, according to most state codes or local codes, everything wastewater flows through the system. People today are way more wasteful than what grandma and grandpa were. The toilet paper that they used back then, if it wasn't a Corb Cob or a Sears and Roebuck, was very thin tissue paper, not the industrial strength, hold the roll of quarters when it's wet type of papers that you're seeing on the market today. Not to mention the use of personal wipes and baby wipes, because God forbid your finger penetrate the paper. Through study, research, education, and training, we now understand that the water cycle. And there's basically 9 steps of the water cycle. There's evaporation, condensation, precipitation, interception. I can't pronounce all of these. Infiltration, percolation, transpiration, runoff, and storage. Within our industry, we're primarily concerned with infiltration, percolation, and storage, maybe a little bit of the interception, which is the surface water that makes it to the streams and the creeks. Evapotranspiration is a huge part of how our soil treatment areas work. But essentially, we now know that what we waste today is going to end up back in the water cycle tomorrow. In Colorado, one of the things that we talk about in these classes, Colorado is blessed in that we have probably the most cleanest, pristine water because it's coming right out of the skies, going right into our Rocky Mountain Springs. So we like that. Once it has done that and we start using it in Colorado, and the wastewater that we generate ends up going into the Platte River, whatever, it goes on downstream. By the time it reaches the Gulf Coast or the East Coast, depending on which track it takes, that water molecule has been through the human body 7 times. So that's, again, why we want to make sure that the wastewater we're putting out there is as clean as possible. I was at a mega conference in San Marcos, Texas, a few years back, and there was a gentleman from he was a regulator from Houston, from Harris County, and he had some really good presentations there. But one of them that I really one of the points that I took away from his conversation was just talking about what we were just talking about, the how the wastewater, wasted here, used here. And he pointed out that Dallas's wastewater is Houston's drinking water. So when you think about that, that's pretty close proximity. When I talk about it going from Colorado to the East Coast, Colorado to the Gulf Coast, that's quite a distance. So it going through the human body, it doesn't land quite as hard as that Houston is drinking the poop water from Dallas, right? This might help you understand why it's so important to be educated on these systems, their regulations, their design, their functionality, regardless of what area of the industry you're working in. So again, every sector in the industry, in the on-site industry, is going to need some basic training and education in not only their little piece of the pie, but a basic understanding of the sectors before and after them in the treatment train. Most people think that they just need to know the ins and out of their little niche, right? So if you're a pumper, I just need to know how to pump a septic tank. If you're an installer, I just need to worry about digging the dirt. And maybe there are jobs out there where this is true. I can't think of any off the top of my head. And it seems to me that anything you do, you still need to have an understanding of what's happening before you see it and what's happening with it afterwards, so that you can make sure that whatever you're doing is the best that it can be, right? And what about you as a professional? What does having a certain level of understanding through training and education do for you? Through the life cycle of an on-site system, there's at least 6 parties involved with how that system is born, lives, and dies. You have regulators, those are the rules guys. You have engineers and designers, those are the ones coming up with how that's going to work based on the rules. You have the installers, those are the guys that are building the information, so they need to understand the designs and how they're going to make that work. You got the maintenance people, those are the ones that are going to keep that system operating. That includes O&Ms, pumpers, and inspectors. And then you have the homeowner. Those are the people in charge of making sure that that system works and that it doesn't pollute and that it doesn't cause problems for them and the environment. And of all those individuals, who's in charge of the system? The homeowner, who has the least experience, the least knowledge, the least education and training to ensure that that system is operating at its optimal performance? The homeowner. The homeowner is relying on the on-site professional for guidance and direction in the systems. That's why it's up to you as a professional to be able to provide the homeowner with the most up-to-date and current and accurate information regarding the on-site system. That's why I believe that training and education are an ongoing, lifelong pursuit. And it's also important, that's again why you need to know more than just your little world, right? Because as soon as you tell the homeowner something's going on, if you're a pumper and you're saying, okay, your system's malfunctioning, now they're going to want to know, well, what's that going to take? Well, if you know about installation, you can talk to them about what the next steps are. If you know regulations, you can talk to them about what the next steps are. And it's important that we as an industry disseminate the same information. It doesn't do anyone any good to be saying different things. And again, going back to why I got involved in this industry, I wanted validation for what we were telling people about how these systems work. I have the guy down the street telling them put in, 5 pounds of baking soda, 5 pounds of yeast, and they're good to go. And I'm saying, no. I got the guy over here telling them add all the product in the world. And oh, by the way, I'm selling that to you. That'll take care of your system. And I'm saying, no, learn how to take care of your system. If whatever you're putting in your system, all the product in the world ain't going to fix it, right? Um, and it's important that we as an industry disseminate that information. We need to help the homeowner help themselves as an industry. How do you fit into the puzzle? All sectors in the on-site industry are interrelated, and we all need to be thinking about how and what we do and know the impact of the guy before and after you. There was a time my husband referred to pumpers in the industry as a bunch of vagabonds, guys who didn't want to share their trade secrets. And I'm sitting there, really? On pumping poop? They came in, did their thing, griped about the engineer, griped about the installer, griped about the homeowner, then left. Didn't have too much interaction with the homeowner other than taking the call, showing up, pumping the septic tank, collecting their money and walking away. And you can and will have an impact on the guy before and after you. The more you know, the more you can discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly of the system. And the more you're involved with your local trade association, you can help the regulators help themselves. Regulators they have a job to do, but God bless them, a lot of them, because they're not out in the field, they're not digging the dirt, they're not pumping the septic tanks. What looks good on paper might not work in reality. And that's where working with a trade association, building, cultivating those relationships with your regulator is going to help them move things forward. Okay. Um, I've seen a huge change in the way that regulators and designers look at some of the other individuals in the other sectors as training, education, and certification has become more prevalent and accessible. They have found out that these boots on the ground guys, basically us, know more about what works and what doesn't work in the field than they've given us credit for. I think that training and education of some sectors has empowered installers, pumpers, and operations maintenance people, and inspectors to speak up more and communicate with the regulators and designers to help them help themselves and help the customer. Having that basic knowledge of what each sector is doing and how they are doing it makes not only their piece of the puzzle work better, but it makes all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And communications is the key. Communications is going to be critical to these systems. Okay. What being educated does for you. It improves your knowledge as to why, and as the whys, what for with regard to regulations. Why does the county want such a thing? Why did the designer put it together this way? What the heck is the homeowner doing to the system? The more you know, the better off you're going to be. Regulators often have I talked about this, have a great idea on paper, but when it's put into action, it'll fall short. Being educated on what the goals and objectives of the system design are, and being educated on what your role for that sector is, can often head off bad regulations when communicating back to the regulators. My son-in-law, who's an electrician who also works with us, he explained to the state guy why the use of certain electrical gas seal off components were going to be a costly overkill regulation for what we do. The state guy, the regulator, kept that requirement out of the regulations based on his conversation with Jeff. Again, education and communication at work. When the boots on the ground people, you have firsthand knowledge of what does and doesn't work. You need to relay that back to those people so that things can change in a positive manner. Your value to the industry and the consumer cannot be overrated. And our industry, unfortunately, does lack a lot of respect. Okay, so it's our duty and our obligation to make sure that people know that we are a professional service and a professional service industry, and that we care about our customers, our community, and our industry. Okay. Um, Homeowner install at its finest. If you were in the inspector class yesterday, you saw these pictures. Okay. This is a dose to gravity system. My buddy Bob, who used to work for Weld County, brought me these pictures. This is a homeowner who did not understand the concept of pump to gravity. He installed his pump tank there, and then the distribution box for the gravity system, and then voila. The homeowner, he didn't understand that concept of pump to gravity. He did not understand his assignment. Education matters. Um, and this is where simple training and education can come in pretty handy, or clearly when someone is lacking training and education, right? There are many different organizations at the national level, state level, and local level that offer training education programs for practitioners in the on-site industry. The EPA is trying to make more college level and degree programs available in the industry. That's part of that STEM program that they're doing. However, in my opinion, EPA, God bless their pointy little freaking heads, tend to focus more on college level and somehow think that a college degree for a septic pumper is going to be necessary. I disagree. I think a college degree in some instances can be a little bit overkill for certain individuals. You need to have a plan. You need to know what you want to do. As a professional, you will need to determine what level of training will suit you for your expectations and needs. They all have value, they all have something to offer, and they will all raise the bar for individuals in the industry. National programs. National programs offer many different training and education programs and workshops. What you're looking for in these programs are going to set the standard that is acceptable across the country. It should address the basics that do not change from location to location, state to state. The primary goal of the national programs and objectives are to set those national standards that everyone agrees upon. These programs will create the foundation and the basis of your understanding of subject matter, basic principles, if you will, those things that are not location specific. They will be covering the applicable topics that are universal in nature, regardless of location. They are establishing protocols for working through issues and evaluating systems. These trainings tend to be broad in nature and scope, and they're always a good place to start because, again, a lot of the stuff that we do, it doesn't matter if you're in California, Michigan, Pennsylvania, the concept is going to be the same. You should be able to take what you learn in these trainings across the country. State and local programs. These trainings and education programs are good for more locally focused, usually developed through a state trade association or in conjunction with a state college or educator. They're narrower in scope. They're more in line with local rules and regulations regarding specific applications. They should still follow the nationally accepted guidelines, but they are tweaked to include more local idiosyncrasies and circumstances and laws. They would be the next level of training after the national programs. What you need to know or work locally within your guidelines, the more detail-oriented and structured. Many states have requirements for training that may start with a national course, and then as you advance into the local industry, you're going to be required to gain additional training specific to your locality. Are they necessary? Yes, certainly necessary. Certain sectors will require some kind of college degree, again, designers and engineers. Regulators usually have to meet a certain educational threshold to hold their position. This level of training and education may not address some of the boots on the ground information that may be needed to work at a local level. But this is where networking and understanding your piece of the puzzle is very important. Have resources to go to help enlighten you. Individuals at this level need to remember that it may behoove them to take some more of what they would consider a remedial or basic training just to understand real work applications. What level of training? Everyone gets to decide what level or how deep they want to go in their education. One of the positives that came out of COVID, COVID nonsense, was that many education institutions were able to move to an online or the Zoom type platform and training. This has had at least two positives and two negatives in my perspective. They were able to, first, they were able to continue their training and education. And second, they were able to reduce the cost because less overhead on the classes. The negatives, we lost a lot of the interaction that was going on in the network opportunities because we weren't commingling. And I think that's been a huge disservice to the country as a whole. And I also feel that the testing was less secure doing that. I'm sure there's others, but those are the ones that kind of stuck out to me. Colorado continues to, or CPAL, which is Colorado Professionals and On-Site Wastewater, continues to do online trainings, which has opened up classes nationwide. They limit the number of participants because the testing difficulties and proctoring exams. But if you're just there to gather a continuing education, it's very easy for you to do. Some of the other organizations have focused on creating more online self-paced courses. These are great too, but again, we lose the networking and interaction that can be so important to the learning process. The exchanging of stories, the brainstorming of ideas and solutions, and with the inspector training course specifically in the Zoom format, we were no longer able to have the field component, which is always exciting and interesting to discuss the different interpretations of what we're looking at when we're going through an inspection process. I do hope moving forward that CPAL and some of the other training programs are able to do the in-person courses again. And we have this year, CPAL has gone and we're doing actually hybrid classes where we're doing both in-person and Zoom classes at the same time. It's kind of exciting. How an individual learns is also important consideration. Again, some people's learning style will do just fine in a self-paced online course. Others are going to struggle because they have to have the motivation and that personal attention to questions. Some people are more hands-on, and having the ability to see, feel, and touch the training is very important to that process. For your learning experience, you need to seek those trainings that fit your learning style so that you can get the biggest bang for your buck on your investment in training and education. Okay. National or local, there are plenty of options out there for training, education, and certification programs. I hate government intrusion, but sometimes it's necessary to ensure that everyone is on the same page with regard to protecting our water resources. Part of the CPAL story is that the timing of the creation of the training program coincided with a major regulation revision. They were doing regulations that hadn't been touched since 1972, and they were based off of 1950s technology, and they were doing this reg revision in 2010. So clearly, they were due. The state felt that training and education was important, but they didn't want to take on the task of creating a training program. So CPAL took it back to CPAL, and they said, basically, if you build it, they will come, which they did. There are only a couple of state level requirements in the new Colorado regulations for training and education, and that was only required if the county or the health agency opted into that part of the regulation, the transfer of title or the use permit program being one of them. But since the adoption of the regulations and implementation of those regulations of the 63 counties in Colorado, 23 of them now require some kind of training, education, and certification for practitioners in their jurisdiction. Working with NAWT, I see all the time individuals seeking out training and education opportunities with or without that regulatory requirement. I like to use Pennsylvania as an example. There's no education requirement, yet PSMA, which is one of the state organizations, has a certified inspector program that is in high demand because of how they put the program together and their interaction and working with the local real estate organizations. It's easier to break into training if there is that regulatory requirement, but I feel like people want to do the right thing. They want to be telling their customers the correct information and providing them with the best service and knowledge they can. And I think that's great. Whether you stick with the just local training or seek out national training or do a combination of both, you're going to be on the good side of that equation. Okay. How far do you want to go? The other thing is to think about with the training, education, and certification opportunities that are out there. It gives the individual and businesses the opportunity to expand into other areas of the industry and grow. We are seeing a lot of people in the pumping world expand into repairs, installation, and vice versa. Having training and education can set you apart from your competitor, whether you're a one-man operation or you plan to expand into a multifaceted organization. There are areas within our industry that are ripe for growth and development. Operations and maintenance is one that I think is, you get the right savvy entrepreneur out there, and that's going to be a huge industry going forward. Having the training and education can set you apart from your competition, whether, oh, I already did that. As, as we keep moving forward and the more we understand about wastewater and on-site, we know that all systems need attention to be need to be monitored and maintained. So having operations and maintenance service business is an untapped area within our industry. There are examples of individuals across the country that have done this, have done very well, but they are few and far between. The more you invest in you and your staff's training, education, and certification, the more ready that you're going to be for what lies ahead. There are vast potentials within the industry, and you can make your mark and make a difference. It all depends on what your goals and aspirations are. Okay, so are we there yet? Okay. So we know we can no longer rely on the job training. Things have changed dramatically since the beginning of wastewater disposal. Research continues on how to treat the wastewater better and how we can manage our water resources and return it back to the appropriate place in the water cycle. The thing about science and research is it's always changing, and its goal is to improve the process. We know that all systems need to be maintained, and our job as professionals in the industry is to know what our systems are designed for and know how to evaluate if they are functioning correctly and to communicate effectively with homeowners or the end users of the system to ensure that they will continue to operate at optimal performance and not cause any environmental or public health issue. There are a lot of training opportunities out there in many different levels. The sky's the limit, and we encourage everyone to speak out or seek out and participate and become involved in the industry to keep it moving forward. Okay. So as I close this thing out, I'm going to just talk about a little bit about some of the things that NAWT has to offer and hopefully help you move your business forward. Um, Uh, not, these are the core courses for NAWT, what we have out there. We are in the process of developing a Business 101 class that's going to be directed towards practitioners, the boots on the grounds people, as opposed to, some of the other sectors to help them set up their business, do marketing and that kind of stuff. The inspector training course, that's kind of our flagships. Since COVID is done, we're now getting back to offering this live and in person, which allows us to do that field trip presentation, which is huge for learning. It's huge learning for a lot of people, being able to get in there, get out there, touch it, feel it, smell that whole process. We've been updating the manuals and presentations the last couple of years. We are going to be working the steps of the inspection to arrive at a conclusion. We're moving from the on-site inspector course to on-site inspection standards. We're going to define them as standards. This is, if you're doing a NAWT inspection, these are the steps you must take. And I think it's going to be really good moving forward. The other thing that we're doing with this particular course is we're adding additional tools in the toolbox to help you evaluate the soil treatment area, which is one of the most difficult ones to evaluate, determining whether it's working, is that water going away. These are all, these are going to be the hydraulic load test and the dry aggregate rules. It's going to help revolutionize the inspection process. The installer course covers what it means to be a professional installer. It's in a one-day format, probably reaches the group that is hardest to get butts in the seat for the installers. They want to be out there digging. They don't want to be in class. Many areas are now requiring this training for installers, and it just gives them the basics and helps them understand their role in the treatment train, which is very significant. If you're doing installation, you are in a very unique position. You're talking up and down that line. You're having to talk regulator language. You're having to talk designer language. You're having to talk homeowner language. You're having to talk operation maintenance and pumper language. So you are in a very unique position there. A good installer can fix a bad design, but a bad installer will make any design bad. They have to communicate. That communication is going to be their main thing. I mean, they are again in a very unique position and have to know a great deal about those sectors before and after them. Okay, this course was recently expanded. We now have an installer 1 and an installer 2 course that we're rolling out this year. So that's kind of exciting there. The O&M courses were developed off of the SIDWIT manual that were created to give service providers a systematic way of evaluating a system. The manual covers so much material that it if they created a single course of the manual, single course off of that manual, it'd be a 4 days long. So it is actually a 2-day, two 2-day courses for that. O&M 1 covers basic systems. O&M 2 covers more advanced treatment, advanced concepts. The design course, NAWT does have a design course, and this course is to cover universal principles for design. It purposefully shies away from delving into anything that would be regulated driven for design. It's a great introductory course for those individuals that do not do design, but they need to understand some of the principles that are used to create them. It's also a nice place to start for someone just out of college getting a PE, but they didn't focus on wastewater as part of that PE process. It helps them understand what we're doing and how and the principles involved in what we're doing. Back truck training class. This is another flagship class for NAWT. This course is very beneficial for new people learning how to operate a vacuum truck. This course was also offered yesterday as a part of the conference. Had great attendance. My husband, who's been driving septic trucks since the 70s, when he took this course, he even said he got something out of it, even though he'd been operating them for a pretty long period of time at that point. We have in the past done waste symposium, waste management options. This is available for disposing of septic. So what are the options out there? What are the options available, and how to go about researching and finding funding for this type of project? Developing a plan for disposal. We haven't done this in several years, but I think with what's going on currently, I haven't really been talking to people out here about any issues that you have, but there's a national crisis that's coming on of people trying to get, what do we do with the waste after we pump it out of the septic tank? It's out where I'm at, your options are getting more and more limited. We can't do land application anymore. And a lot of the municipalities will not let you dump into their municipalities, which means you have to drive farther. You're going to have to charge more, and there's more rules and regulations on it. So this waste treatment symposium talks about some of the options that are out there, how to create a septic receiving facility, and what you need to do and how you need to contact. And again, part of it is educating your regulators and your municipalities as to why they can accept septic and what needs to happen for them to do that. Okay, so in summary, again, talked about all that stuff. We don't know until we know, and now you know. Training and education is an important part of what you do in building your business. It shows that you care, it shows that you're concerned, and it shows you have some proficiency in what you're doing. Okay? We no longer think of terms of disposal. Again, somebody's going to be utilizing that same water downstream, and so we want to make sure that it's safe. There are all types of and levels of training and education out there. The sky's the limit for you to determine what is right for you and how far you want to go. And you don't always need to have a college education, but some type of education in the industry is going to be important and should be available. So I highly recommend utilizing it. That's it. Thank you.